Stoveleg Media, igniting conversation.
This is True Crime Cast. Jamie and John here, and it is almost Christmas.
Merry almost Christmas to you, brother. I hope Santa Claus comes and he's good to you, man.
I got some bad news for you, buddy. I'm just kidding. No,
You're on the naughty list. Well, I knew it.
I did write some letters on your behalf, not in the positive way.
In the year of our Lord, John was naughty.
Wow, that's pretty good. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us here today, and we have got a very interesting case for you. Before we get into that, we did want to thank some folks, as we always do. This comes from a 5-star review over on Apple Podcasts, and this is from Chris Madichin. Sorry if I pronounced your last name wrong, Chris. It says, thanks for doing the story on my babies and Alyssa Davaltz. That was a very eerie case that we did back in June. I encourage you to check that out. It's called Thrown Away. Chris, we are sorry for what you've been through, but of course happy to tell that story. So thank you for adding that review as well.
Also want to say thank you to Rose, came in at the annual membership over on Patreon and took advantage of the 15% discount. So Rose and every other Patreon member, thank you so much. December's case was great, and we've got something cooking up for January 2026, coming up really soon. Cannot believe it.
Sounds like it's really far in the future. We're living in the future.
It's like next week.
It really is. Today we're going to talk about some things that happened at Lake Placid. Do you remember the movie Lake Placid? And if anybody listens to Bless Their Hearts, you know that John's only seen about 3 movies ever.
I haven't seen it, but I have heard of it. So That is a step.
So it was about a killer alligator, and all I remember, I think it was Betty White feeding cows to this giant alligator that had been killing people. And it was just a really because the movie was kind of scary and jumpy, but that was just really funny.
Sometimes I don't know if you're like pulling my leg, trying to see if I will buy it. That sounds like not at all what I was expecting out of a movie about this lake we're about to talk about.
It's legit. So
that would be a fun episode of Bless Their Hearts. You give me 3 movies and it's like 2 truths and a lie. I have to spot which one's the lie.
I can give you 2 different descriptions and you figure out which one's legit. So that was about an alligator. Not going to be talking a lot of alligator here, more horrific crimes, but still Lake Placid. And that was a weird little film. Don't care if I ever see it again. So, John, don't go waste your yearly movie on that one.
I'm not putting that one on my list. But we are going to go back to the Adirondack Mountains. And in the 1970s, this was a case that was discussed by law, and it is still being discussed in classes today. So we're going to go back specifically to 1973. It was a warm summer day when an 18-year-old college student named Philip Domblewski, and I'm sorry if I said that name wrong, and his 3 friends went camping in New York's Adirondack Mountains. Jamie, when I think of New York, of course, New York City comes to my mind, but I've never been there. I've been throughout New York and Buffalo area all the way up to northern New York, and it is absolutely beautiful. And the Adirondack Mountains are certainly the case.
My mind oddly goes to The Office when Michael Scott leaves and they're interviewing people and Jim Carrey comes in and talks about the Adirondacks, and that's all he talks about. And he says, Adirondacks.
I remember him coming in. I don't remember him talking about that.
Going with the family up to the Adirondacks. And that's not even a good impression of anything. So that's on me. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So that night, the students were attacked by a man named Robert Garrow. Now, this man was 38 years old, and he approached the campers and targeted Philip exclusively, and that allowed the others to escape. Now, Philip was tied to a tree and ended up being stabbed to death. And this prompted one of, at the time, probably the biggest manhunt in American history. It ended up lasting 12 days before Garrow was captured. So we're going to kind of walk through this man and everything he did up to this point.
Yeah, I mean, the crimes are essentially, you could break this story up into several sections. The crimes, the arrest and trial, and then, of course, a lot of discussion of the case study. But so we may jump around a little bit in those things. Once he was detained and charged, Garrow was assigned an attorney, Frank Armani. I don't think he makes suits. Frank didn't have any experience in murder trials, so he asked his friend to help him out. This was Francis Belge, who was a pretty experienced criminal defense attorney. Garrow met with them, and he confessed to his attorneys that he had killed Philip Dombalewski. As he continued talking, he also confessed to 2 other murders that nobody was even aware of.
Now, I know that you have like client, privilege or what client attorney privilege, but does that stop when you confess to a crime you're not officially charged with?
Yeah, I guess that's when the questions come in, right? I don't know. In all of our time of doing this, and even in your time, like you've spent a decent amount of time in court for your job.
Well, not with murder cases.
Not with murder cases, but still, people have that privilege regardless of if it's murder or they've done some things to lose custody of their kids or whatever.
I know that when you speak with a therapist, all of what you say is confidential unless you threaten to harm someone else or yourself. So I feel like it shouldn't be legal. So let's just keep going though.
So you think it shouldn't be legal to keep it confidential?
Yeah. Like I think if he were to keep that a secret, like it shouldn't be confidential information. Like that is, okay, please stop talking because I have to let someone know now.
But he's not saying somebody else is going to be hurt. He's just saying I killed 2 other people.
Oh, I know. I'm saying it's separate in from the therapy discussion, but I'm saying in this situation, like that's reportable, I feel like.
Yeah, well, that's that'll be the crux of our debate later. We'll see if we feel the same way. He confessed to killing 16-year-old Alicia Hawk of Syracuse. She had also been camping in that area when Garrow raped and strangled her. 20-year-old Susan Petz of Stoke, Illinois, was also camping up in the Adirondacks with her boyfriend when Garrow kidnapped and killed her. He held Susan for 3 or 4 days before he ended up killing her. He told his lawyers about these murders, and he even drew them a diagram of where they could find these other bodies. And John, obviously this is wild. We're leading so many questions. But also, how does he consistently get one person away from the group they're camping with to do this?
Yeah, I mean, he must have he was either watching them and waited for the right moment, or he had some kind of scheme.
Right.
Unfortunately, a lot of bad guys are really good at being bad.
Yeah.
And I think that he might have been one of them.
And obviously, he had done it a lot, so he was well-versed.
Frank and Francis decided to use this diagram to confirm that their client was telling the truth about these murders. So nowhere did I say they told police.
Right.
They've kept this under their sleeve or
they
up their sleeve.
They took this treasure map with an X over the bodies.
Right. So Francis ended up finding Susan's body. It was in an air shaft of an old coal mine in Mineville, New York. Then they found Sarah's body in a Syracuse cemetery. At both sites, the lawyers photographed the remains of the murdered girls. Francis, while alone, even moved Susan's skull several feet closer to her body to get them both in the same photograph. At this point, it's got to be breaking the law. You're disturbing a crime scene.
Right.
Frank and Francis did not report what they had found to the police. They later destroyed the photographs, the record of their conversations with Garrow, and his diagram. The lawyers told no one they believed all of this information was protected by attorney-client privilege. They were bound by an oath not to disclose information that could incriminate their client. I, however, feel like this is outside of that scope because, your client admitted to murdering people and there have never been formal charges on those. So I don't know. It may be protected. I don't feel like it should be.
So I think the conversation itself of I've done this before, that's a gray area. I could hear arguments for either side and that's protected and that's not. Finding evidence of these people that have been murdered, manipulating physical evidence, and then leaving the bodies out there with the families not knowing where these people are for the elements to continue to get rid of this evidence and to destroy anything that they could have later on, that crosses all the lines, in my opinion.
And let's just be frank. I mean, I think what they were doing was intentional. They knew that this might get their guy a plea deal. You know, if we can tell you where these other bodies are, what are you going to give us?
Right. And it's funny you said he could be Frank because his attorneys are Frank and Francis.
Sorry. Well,
And they found the girl in a mine in Mineville. So it's not a lot of creativity in that area of the Adirondacks. This community put a lot of pressure on these attorneys. They believe that they knew what Garrow had done, and they believe that there were enough other cases around to where he was potentially involved. Susan's father came all the way from Illinois to talk to Frank because he had heard speculation that Garrow may be connected to his daughter's disappearance. He begged Frank to tell him whether his daughter was alive or not, but Frank didn't say a word. Now, again, for what he had been told from his client, I think telling that, especially just to a citizen, would have been a violation of confidentiality. I took pictures of her remains. Yeah, I'm not sure that what kind of law there is about lying about that, but certainly some ethical and moral grounds crossed. Frank also had to deal with the fact that his own daughter, Dorena, was a classmate of Alicia, the first missing girl at Bishop Ludden High School. Frank knew this girl's dad from the school, and they both worked at the courthouse. So he knew this guy that he worked with. His daughter was at the school where they talked about the missing girl.
I don't know how at that point you're still on this case. You know, I think it's a conflict. And even if it's not considered a conflict, how do you as a human being with a heart in your chest not be so mad at this guy that you just refuse to take his case anymore?
Right. And I mean, how do you look at Alicia Hawk's dad at work, knowing you have seen her remains and go on with your life? I don't understand that level of not having a conscience. Maybe Frank and Francis are sociopaths, but they were certainly keeping some secrets that are questionable at best.
As the trial got closer and closer, Frank and Francis offered a plea bargain to the prosecution. They told them that they might be able to help find the missing women if Garrow were sentenced to life in a mental hospital rather than prison. Again, they are just really trying to help this guy, and I don't know that I could. I think being a defense attorney has to be one of the most challenging jobs, and I just don't know that I have it in me. The prosecution refused this offer. Their next step was to tell their client to plead not guilty by reason of insanity. So Frank lined up several witnesses, like Garrow's parole officer, to testify that he was mentally unstable, and he did not want Garrow to have to take the stand at all. On the Monday of the second week of the trial, Frank was late for court. When he got there, he was stunned to see that Francis had called Garrow to the stand. You know, you and I work together a lot, and if we have agreed, hey, don't do this, and then I come in late and you've done that thing, I'm going to be a little mad.
Yeah, let's just imagine we have a conversation and you promise me you're going to edit something out, and then I hear about it.
I really thought you were going to say, like, why haven't you wrote that third episode of Left on Dead? And I was like regretting my life's decisions to even bring it up.
It's a sensitive subject. Go on.
While testifying in his own defense, Garrow admitted to murdering 4 people, including the missing girls, Susan and Alyssa. This is, not what you want to have happen if you are his defense attorney and you've just walked into this. During his questioning, Francis said, "Is that the one I found?" And he agreed. So at this point, if I'm Frank, I'm going to just stop and drop kick Francis in the middle of court. That's going to adjourn things. I'm going to get charged, but at least this questioning stops, And I was watching a movie this past weekend it was a TV show where somebody made fun of it. His son was a lawyer, and he just told lawyer jokes all the time about them being sleazy, not trustworthy. And obviously some of the attorneys that work in it, God bless them, they do a great job, and their job is very difficult. But
when you get an image of somebody with slicked back hair and somebody who just seems untrustworthy, these two guys are those pictures.
Legitimately, if I'm Frank, I'm going to raise objections to my partner's questions. Objection on what grounds? It really destroys my case. The
liar.
Yeah, the attorney.
Jim Carrey just keeps coming up in this episode.
The attorneys held a press conference the next day and admitted that they knew the location of the missing girls and that they had known it for 6 months. I cannot imagine how the community and the police department would react to this news.
So obviously this is going to be a shock to the community and to the legal world. We'll break all that out when we get back from the break and figure out if Frank and Francis ended up in the slammer. After Frank and Francis had announced that they knew about all these things, and at this point, again, Garrow had testified to it in trial on his own. So these are things that he had put out into the world, and they came forward and said, yes, he had told this to us before. We felt like we didn't have the ability to share it, and we've known about it for about 6 months and confirmed where they are. Now, they weren't arrested immediately. Obviously, this is a complex situation, but they went out to get a few drinks, and Frank admitted, I exploded, and we ended up in a fist fight. So he did not fight him in the courtroom, but he did go at him when they were out for drinks. And you have to think this is a what were you thinking situation. So they legitimately got in a fist fight at a bar. Frank had a black eye and showed up at the courtroom with such. But heading back to the courtroom for now, Garrow was eventually convicted of Dumbalewski's murder.
Sorry, I'm thinking ahead, but legitimately, he's going to have so many definite reasons to file appeals because his counsel was ineffective.
They were, and that's a great question. If they're just bad, and that's what they are at this point, right? But he also confessed on the stand. So, man, what a tangled web we weave. So they were trying to get him with the insanity plea or with the plea agreement into a mental health facility. He was sentenced to prison for 25 years to life. Again, hoping for closer to life, right? Frank and Francis's decision to keep those secrets would cause both public and legal backlash. And, there is a lot of varying opinion on how this should have played out. The parents of these victims and the community around the Adirondacks where these people were going missing and they had no idea why they were feeling unsafe going outside. And essentially the community was terrorized by Garrow without knowing who he was. So this entire community was furious. And there were social complications here as well, political complications. This case took place shortly after Watergate. So in general, at this time in American history, the public didn't trust attorneys, the legal system, politicians. All trust from the government and the legal system was essentially hanging by a thread. There was corruption in the highest offices, and now we're seeing corruption in this local court about these murder cases. So people are pointing the finger everywhere and losing trust, and that's probably where a lot of these lawyer jokes came from.
Absolutely. One of the victim's parents filed an ethics complaint against the lawyers with the New York Bar Association. The New York State Bar Association Committee on Professional Ethics found that the attorneys acted ethically by refusing to disclose information about the missing women. They emphasized that they had attorney-client privilege and that privilege is necessary to ensure clients disclose all possible pertinent information to their lawyers in order to help them craft their strongest defense and protect their rights.
To be clear, you said they found it as ethical.
Yes.
They said they did the right thing.
I think that we need to form another ethics committee to teach the New York State Bar Association on professional ethics what ethics are. Now, I do think that it is very important for you and your attorney to have unfiltered, honest conversations so that they know everything. And you know what you don't want to have happen is you as an attorney are thinking one thing and then your client gets on the stand and completely surprises you. I get that. But this is insane that this kind of information would be protected under that.
Yeah, you and I can argue about the specifics later, but it's wild to me that they came out essentially and said they were right, and it got really messy.
Yeah. As a result, Frank and Francis lost friends and colleagues. Their law practices suffered and were eventually closed. They were the victims of vandalism and death threats. They had to move their families for their safeties. Francis ended up moving to Florida.
Of course.
Because why not, Frank ended up having a heart attack, would later went on to rebuild his law practice. So, yeah. I ethically sound is what they said. I cannot believe it.
Why wouldn't defendants want to hire them all the time if they're obviously willing to stretch the ethics approval process?
I feel like this is Better Call Saul. This is Saul Goodman stuff.
It really does.
My cousin Vinny.
It really does. There's just so much shady behavior happening here. Even if you agree on principle that they should have kept that confidential, all the other things are very messy. They continue to publicly and privately double down on their decision, saying their duty of confidentiality bound them to protect that information that he gave them. The legal community agreed with their decision. It was even investigated by a grand jury to see if charges should be pressed against them. So you have the ethics board saying they did the right thing, but then we turn around and we have Francis get indicted and charged with failing to report a dead body and failing to provide it with a decent burial in the case of Susan Petz. The National Association of Criminal Offense Lawyers wrote a brief supporting Belch, that's Francis, arguing that attorney-client privilege would be destroyed if he is convicted. Now, this charge is specifically about him finding the body, not reporting it, and not providing it with a decent burial, which I think is, I've
never heard of that particular charge.
That should not be a thing, because then you get around that. If you kill somebody, you bury them, right? You avoid a charge. Don't like that. All charges were ultimately dismissed against Francis by a trial court judge who praised Francis for his commitment to his duties as an attorney in the face of adversity. And this is a quote from the judge. He said, "The effectiveness of counsel is only as great as the confidentiality of its client-attorney relationship. If the lawyer cannot get all the facts about the case, he can only give his client half of a defense. This, of necessity, involves telling his attorney everything remotely connected with this crime." Now, I think you can argue that those other two crimes aren't necessarily connected, even though they're a similar MO and obviously done by the same person. They didn't pertain directly to the evidence in the original case of Dumbalewski. For more context, at the time of this trial, all attorneys in New York followed New York's version of the American Bar Association Model Code of Professional Responsibility. Look, there are a lot of things wrong with this country. Understanding the law is a problem, and I think we start with the naming of these bodies. The American Bar Association Model Code of Professional Responsibility. It's a
very niche group,
Yeah. Why can't it just be, I don't know, the regulators of lawyers?
Mm-hmm.
Mount up. Oh, man, I don't like it. Anyway, they said that they allowed a lawyer to reveal the intention of his client to commit a crime and information necessary to prevent the crime, but not prior acts admitted in confidence. The prosecution appealed the court's decision, and If it feels like we're bouncing around, this is about Francis's decision of dropping charges, but the appeals court affirmed the decision that the charges should have been dismissed. They did, however, express concern for a limitless attorney-client privilege that could push ethical boundaries, but obviously they didn't feel like this reached that threshold. They said attorneys must protect their clients, but must also observe basic human standards of decency. Moving a skull to make sure you get all the bones in a picture, that's not decent.
I completely agree. And I really don't know where the line is, but I feel like what they did crossed it. So for 4 years after his conviction, Garrow escaped from prison. So this dude was in prison, not 4 years, but for 4 years.
Right.
Just wanted to make sure that was clear. When authorities searched his cell, they found a hit list, and guess whose names were on it? Frank and Francis. They reached out to the lawyers, and Frank remembers something disturbing. He would say that during the trial, Frank's daughter attended to see her father at work. And then Garrow, noticing she was there, turned to her and said, "It is nice to see you again, Doriana." And that is one of the creepiest things you could say, because Garrow had never met Frank's daughter. So this sent a chill up Frank's spine.
It kind of sent a little chill up my spine when you just read it.
He thought that Garrow might have been stalking his daughter. So this just really creeped him out.
Why were they on the hit list? They hid evidence for him, and he's the one that admitted it on the stand.
Yeah.
I feel like they went above and beyond to try to keep my man out of prison.
If Frank hadn't have been late, this whole story could be different.
Right.
So this plus the hit list ended up compelling Frank to give the police a call and let them know some information about Garrow that might help them figure out where he had gone.
Oh, now we're telling where he's at.
Well, I mean, his daughter's involved potentially, right? And his life has been threatened. So they ended up telling him, things that he remembered about their client. Frank would go on to explain that, quote, "I was on a death list and my family was threatened. Nothing goes before that. I felt that my primary duty to society and to my family was to get him recaptured and locked up to serve out his sentence. He and I had parted company when he threatened my family and my life," end quote. So with that information, police ended up finding Garrow in a field. So when they found him, Garrow stood up and actually began firing at the police. And when police returned gunfire, Garrow was shot and killed.
Yeah, it's tough to tell from the report if this was a suicide by cop or if he was genuinely trying to open fire and escape. We're 45 years removed from this now, but this case is still discussed in law school as an example of confidentiality to clients. It's a central piece of professional responsibility, and it's a core of the canon of teaching how to be a defense attorney. The central question is, how much is meant to be confidential? Case also raises bigger questions about the role of an attorney ethically, their obligations to their client versus their obligations to society. What if Garrow had been found innocent? Could they have let him go knowing what a danger he may be to the public? Would they have ever told the victims' families where their daughters were? Some scholars have also questioned whether or not the lawyers would have been required to help the girls if they had been found alive. Hear me out. That question is, if they found the girls and he said, "I tied these girls up," are his lawyers obligated to rescue them or bound to confidentiality enough to let them stay there and die?
I would, we're going to have to do a sequel on this where we get an attorney to come in and talk about this, because I really feel like this falls outside of ethical. Yes, this information is definitely going to incriminate your client, but you have a duty. I feel like you should have a duty to those girls, whether they're alive or dead.
Yeah, as a human.
Yeah. I mean, it's really not black or it's black and white in my brain. It's not gray. So I feel like they crossed the line. At an ABA conference, Frank was asked whether he had ever thought about telling Garrow, basically, I don't want to know any more about this. Stop talking to me, because I don't need to hear this, and it doesn't pertain to this particular case. He responded, no, when you're in, plus the excitement of it, you know. Yeah, like this is not a movie. This is real life. And the excitement of it is sickening because those are two dead girls, one of which you knew her father. So
Right.
if I know what happened, if something were to ever happen to, I'm not even going to say one of your kids, but one of my
Appreciate
coworkers' kids, and I knew what happened, you better, by God, believe that I'm going to tell
Sure.
who needs to know. So, man, I'm going to get fired up here.
Yeah, it's I didn't think I would get so worked up about this.
So one of the girls that we're talking about, Susan Petz, her mother was never satisfied with the case. Lawyers withheld her daughter's location, and the killer was dead before facing any legal consequences for the murder of her daughter. In 2016, she did an interview with Radiolab where she criticized law schools for their teaching of this case. She said that lawyers should consider the victims' families when deciding whether to keep certain information about missing victims confidential. I agree to an extent with her argument. Some legal scholars have also criticized the case, saying that keeping the information confidential did not result in a better outcome for their client. Others say that their refusal to share the information was appalling.
Amen.
They say that the attorney should have disclosed the information in a way that would not impact their client, asking for immunity in exchange for the locations. That's what our writer.
We usually see that when, you know, they know that there are other bodies out there. Here, they didn't know it.
I mean,
or at least the prosecution allegedly didn't know it.
I'm surprised, you know, this might be a scumbag way to think, but I've got to report this guy. And then, you know what? I've just got 2 more cases that I'm going to be working on, paid for by the tax dollars. So, I don't know. Some scholars think that it's unfair to exempt lawyers from laws like the Public Health Code requiring the disclosure of the dead bodies for the health and safety reasons, since the rule applies to everyone else. The whole time I've been sitting here thinking about, you know, there are certain professions where this kind of disclosure is not, you know, you don't have to do it. So, of course, this is one of them. But I'm also thinking about priests. You know, priests do not have to disclose this kind of information. Well, not only do they not have to, but they are bound by their faith that if they do that, if a priest hears a confession and then reports that to the authorities, they have broken their vow and they lose their priesthood.
Yeah.
And I'm not okay with that either.
Right.
Just going to go ahead and say it. I feel like if you told, not you, Jamie, but you
Not
in
a
general,
priest.
if you tell your pastor who's not a priest that you murdered someone, your pastor should probably let the police know. And by probably, I mean the pastor should let the police know. While God can certainly forgive you, and I do think he is gracious enough to do so, you are still bound by human law. And
the pastor doesn't have the authority to issue that forgiveness anyway. Well,
that's a
mind.
Protestant versus Catholic conversation.
Never
but
mind.
I
Don't
see
want to
what
get
you're
into
saying,
that right
but,
now. Yep.
But you're absolutely right. I mean, it is not the man. Yeah, I don't want to get into that either. But I do feel like there is a responsibility to warn. You do not want a murderer out and about. You do not want a child rapist out and about. So protect them, protect others, and follow the law.
Yeah. So I think you and I are on the same page here. I think if he let me ask you that part first, because I have several questions for you. One, do you think him simply sharing that information with his attorneys, that they should have kept that confidential if they never had the map and the bodies?
I feel like even if it was just that, they still have a duty to report.
Yeah.
Because that is, yes, it is going to incriminate your client, but it is a separate case. It is not at all connected to this case.
Yeah.
So I feel like, yes, they should have notified police that there was a confession to another, especially when you found it to be true. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think those are 2 separate things. And I'm going to disagree with you on the first part for a couple of reasons. One, I think sharing it with them, let's say that they did go and tell authorities that he shared it. Let's say he's lying Then we're wasting resources out there, and he's just putting off his trial, and running people in circles. So that possibility is out there. I do think, they didn't have evidence on that, so it's just something he said. They don't go out and verify everything he says. So there's that piece. Also, now especially after this case, if they go and tell people, then he has an appeal that they violated his confidentiality and that the trial shouldn't have counted anyway. So there are a few reasons there. I think what he said maybe should have been kept confidential.
What do you do with it though? So you've heard that. Let's just go post-trial. Doesn't really matter what direction it plays out in trial. This information. You know that there's a possibility. If they don't go look, there's a possibility that one of these missing girls has been, their death or murder has been confessed to. What then?
That's a great question. And
is that when your obligation starts?
Is it even,
or is it even an obligation?
Like, does it extend eternally or till their appeals are up? How long does that take? That's the question I don't know. And that's what in the trial time frame, I think you keep it confidential. After that, I don't know the laws or obviously
the ethics panel said that they're not in favor of a limitless.
So is there a time limit? And I don't know about that. Let's say he's found guilty. He's in jail 25 to life. There's still the possibility that he could get out, but let's say he's found innocent. Could they let him go knowing that he may be a danger to other people? He can never be tried for this one again because he was found innocent. Yeah. Double jeopardy. Sorry. What is double jeopardy? And he may go out and hurt other people. What's their liability there? Yeah. In theory, still, they should keep it confidential.
And they didn't seem too bothered about it until he had escaped and their names were on a list. And then the information about Frank's daughter came out.
So before we got to that, I had the thought of what if, and season 4 of Left on Dead, if you ever do your part of season 3, let's say that he confessed to killing Frank's daughter. What's he do then? Does he have the same ethical code? Does he have the same ethical boundary? And does he stick to it if it's his daughter? Well, I don't think so.
I would imagine that
he should recuse himself, but
yeah, I feel like that should be the case. And if he doesn't, an attorney or a judge rather should recruit.
But how would he know?
I don't know how to say that word.
If you don't tell anybody.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
I don't know.
Man, I'm thinking of all the attorneys we've ever worked with to see which ones we want to call. We know the prosecutors. We know so many others that
we've been meaning to call Jarrett Ferrantino anyway. He's written a book, so we can talk to him. We got some attorneys we've used a time or two. Maybe we can pull in as well. But I'm just fascinated to hear others' take on this because for me, I think it's gray of what you do when he tells you. I think once you see the bodies, you're committing crimes at that point, and I think there's no way it's justifiable to keep your mouth shut. I don't care what the AMA, PC, AETR ethics committee said. I think it's crap.
We, on the same hand and in the same breath, we had an attorney for a situation. And I tell you, it was pretty freeing being able to talk with our attorney frankly. And I'm sorry to use the word frankly again.
So many Franks. A lot of Franks.
We didn't, first off, I don't think we did anything wrong. Second off, we didn't admit to doing not only that thing wrong, but then other things wrong. So if I did admit to doing something else wrong, I don't think I'd be surprised if she went to the authorities and told on us.
And to be clear, we did not have criminal charges. This was a libel issue. It was something in an episode one time that we said that
it's gone, it's done,
it's whatever. But you're right. What if we had been talking about that situation and that conversation that we had, that we shared, and then we're like, oh, also we knocked off a bank. But I don't think she should have to keep that confidential.
No, absolutely not.
Also, we didn't knock off a bank.
No, not that we're going to tell you about. We'll tell our attorney that. No, but just in regards to attorneys, it is great to be able to confide in them everything because they need to know how to protect you. And I'm not just saying how to get them off on doing something wrong. I'm talking about how to make sure that your rights are intact
Right.
and that they don't have any crazy surprises while doing so.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. But I think finding the bodies, photographing them, moving
Disturbing
them,
a crime scene. I mean, that's insane.
it infuriates me. So this is something that, I mean, law schools are still teaching this, as in Frank and Francis done good.
Yeah.
They did a great job of keeping confidentiality.
You've got to reach out to attorneys right now and
fully
set up some
disagree.
interviews.
Yeah, we're gonna. Yeah, I am literally on the edge of my seat.
Yep.
I am ready to go. So we will plan to have a follow up for this. Not sure where it'll be, when it'll be. It's almost Christmas. Maybe hard to get with somebody, but really excited to talk to others about this ethical question. Would love to hear from you. Maybe you think we're crazy, and you think that this is black and white. You never say anything as an attorney. I fully disagree with you, but I'll hear your argument. You know,
Absolutely.
that kind of guy.
Guys, we appreciate it. This year, if you're sitting around on Christmas vacation and need more True Crime Cast and you've already binged everything that we have, don't forget about Patreon for $3 a month. Spend some of that Christmas moolah that your Aunt Sally gave you and check us out on Patreon.
Yeah, we really appreciate you guys. Spotify Wrapped and those kinds of things came out recently, and to see that the word million used in any, like, not beyond our wildest dreams that we think that would be a consideration. And we are just incredibly grateful. If we did pop up on your Wrapped or whatever ripoff that other apps are doing of Wrapped, we would love for you to share that on social media, and please tag us. We'll share it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that would be great.
You guys are the best.
We love you. And until next crime, this has been True Crime Cast.
You've listened to True Crime Cast, distributed by Stoveleg Media. Check out stoveleg.com to find out more about your hosts and to find other podcasts to listen to. Stoveleg Media, igniting conversation.